Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles.
Nothing like that to get you, motivated and get moving.
Exactly, right. It's like the opening of an anime. But they just pump you up and then they let you down. But
Oh
anyway,
no.
actually, not let you down, but it's just kind of, the ending comes and it's like, all right, we're just going to put some soft music on just to kind of bring it down a little bit. So, you've had your fun. Now just calm it down and go to bed.
Oh no.
I don't know. I don't know how anime works like that. But anyway, that's because anyway, I am your host, Roddykat, and you can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CBCaps on Instagram. And that intro and anime, that anime hopeful to be that you have just heard comes from none other than one Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram.
What's up, everybody?
Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at?
And I fear that the extent of my anime, despite all the time we have with pandemic and working from home, still, not sadly, the extent of my anime is still kind of relegated to this. I just like hearing that.
I mean, you know what? That's not a bad way to be. And for those that didn't know, that's not Super Friends, even though there was a version of Super Friends that did kind of sound like that. That was Battle of the Planets. Thank you very much. Get it right. Or G-Force for some of you other folks.
It's composed by the same composer.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, people would be like, "Oh, that's Super Friends." No.
Nope.
Like, I see where you get that, but no.
Exactly.
Super Friends was anime in its own right, not really, but anyway, folks, we are here tonight for another Comic Book Chronicles, and we are here to tell you that we are going to make Agent 7_70 a weeb one of these days. Just you wait. We may not start another podcast about it, but nevertheless, it's gonna happen. But also, we're also here to tell you that you can find this here podcast on the Coast of the Podcast Network. That's CSPN.us.
View it today.
You can also find this on your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or the Coast of the Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. We're Anime Slither. You'll be joining us soon. I don't know, just kind of spitballing that one. I don't know. But anyway, folks, we're here for another Comic Book Chronicles. We got some new releases this week, and we're about to go into it, actually. Starting off with Cable, number 3. I wasn't entirely sure that this book was necessary when it started, and it's only 3 issues in. Still not really sure, but I've been kind of actually enjoying it more than I have anything with Cable in the past.
Are you doing it off of my recommendation, or were you reading it on your own? Because I remember saying something very similar to that at the end. Like as we've kind of had a chance to catch up because of the slowdown due to the pandemic lockdown.
Right. On my own. Yeah, on my own, because I was curious about what this book was going to be, and you talking about it was like, well, this is, and I don't think I read it.
Added impetus, I got you.
Yeah, and when we talked, actually I don't remember if I actually read it when it came out. I might have read it after the fact, or if I did read it, and I can't remember talking about it because and even though it's not that long ago.
Right, but at the end of the day, there were only 2 issues to catch up with, so it wasn't that hard.
Right. No, I think if I didn't read it like before the show, I read it like directly after it. Like so,
right.
And then when 2 came out, I was actually reading because we did talk about that for sure. I do know that.
I was about to say, because it's like your experience was very similar to mine, which is you didn't really expect to too much from the title, and found yourself kind of like, oh wow, this is actually kind of quirky.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, it's a fun book.
yeah,
And we still don't know what they're doing with parts of it, and I think they're starting to bridge that in this issue, even without calling a direct a direct reference to it. But they're also starting something else, or not starting something, but they're also bringing something else in the X world, that's kind of been out there. So yeah,
right.
so basically, we start off with a flashback of young Cable killing old Cable, which wasn't that long ago, folks. It's just, um, and I don't remember if how that went was directly how it went, but I do remember a couple of beats of it. And I feel like I even remember that last part of it, but I'm not even entirely sure. But regardless, um, apparently that's the thing that's coming back up in this one, because so young Cable has the flashback. He wakes up and he's still in the hands of the three space knights. One I didn't realize, but the one that has the Rom looking head on his chest plate, and
Mhm.
that's talking to him. I mean, I know that's not actually what it is, but
Right. I was about to say that's. I mean, he's the, and mild spoilers here. That's the decapitated one.
right,
He's basically being worn as a necklace at that point.
right. So it's like a
So
big
that
Flavor Flav
it's pretty
clock.
amusing. Yeah, exactly. It's pretty amusing. They play these. And I jokingly have said this before. They play these Space Knights off as kind of like the rejects. They also don't. They just don't understand. They don't. They're not, I guess, familiar with, or just don't care about the exploits of one particular Space Knight who made his way to Earth, who is licensed to Hasbro. So,
Yeah, there is that.
you know. But then, if you think about it, for any fans of the ROM Space Knight series from back in the day, the vast majority of the Space Knights felt the same way about fleshlings the way these do. So, but then, if you think about it, for any fans of the ROM Space, whoa, I'm rebounding.
Oh, I wasn't. I was hoping you didn't hear that, but that was
Funny.
that was me. Don't that was yeah. Oh
I was just like, yo, that was wild. I just heard my commentary come back to myself.
no. Yeah, because I forgot to put out the Twitter notification and I needed that link. So there we go.
That's funny.
It's out there. And
Right. But
anyway,
in
but
any
yeah, you're right.
whatchamacallit, um, just moving on, the Space Knights and Young Cable hatch a time travel plan. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? Endgame?
Of
Anybody?
course. Well, not only just that, but just the Cable in general. Who is used to traveling back and forth, including, and especially, which I did not realize. So the plan involved getting something from old Cable,
Right.
unlike a certain raccoon that's not a raccoon that may be called Rocket in a certain movie, needed a part of a body. So Cable, Esme of the Cuckoos, and the Space Knights go to retrieve this thing, find out that it's not where it should be, and of course it's in the possession of one Deadpool, which, as both Agent 70 and I both noted, it's like, yeah, that was it was bound to happen that there was going to be a Deadpool appearance, but I didn't think it was going to be this soon.
There it is.
Um, so, which, like I said, it was inevitable. So when and the whole thing, I think, is because this issue does not have the wrappings of Path to 10 of X, or 10 of Swords, excuse me, or X of
Right.
Swords, whatever. Um, it feels like it definitely has a direct tie to it, because the whole thing is surrounding the sword that Cable finds himself in possession of, which is the Sword of Galador, which is what the three Space Knights are also out to get, because they're trying to. They basically was like, well, our planet is gone, so we're going to take over this planet and reform it with this sword. But Cable's like as Agent 70 said, Agent 70, I mean, excuse me, as Cable was like, well, I can do you one better, and that's where this time travel plan hatches off, because again, Cable's no stranger to time travel. Um,
Exactly.
so he goes off to find his body, his old body rather. And I did not realize that Deadpool had killed old Cable like previously, like directly previously before. And I was wondering, like, was that in Rosenberg's thing, or was that in, or it's just for like, I don't know where that was from.
Don't remember.
Yeah, and I don't either. And I wasn't even gonna go back and find out because it wasn't that terribly important. But I was like, okay, sure, that was the thing that happened. But so yeah, they have their little bonding moment, whatever the kids. But and Cable ends up getting, you know, what what he wanted. I also didn't realize that there was a reference to something that I'm fairly certain a lot of people would not, who a person that a lot of people would not even know at these points, and that would be one Benny Hill.
Ah,
I was
did
like,
see
I saw that. I was like, who nowadays would even remember that name outside of people of a certain vintage?
That's a Google. I was about to say that's a Google deep dive waiting to happen for any of these young readers.
Actually, it was a Google deep dive. Well, not even a deep dive. It was a Google dive for me because I did not know that that actually happened, or at least I don't remember that actually. Because so there was a reference that does Deadpool. And I won't even give it away because it's it's an amusing read whether you know it or not. But it was a real world reference that of something that actually happened involving Benny Hill. And I was like, wait, did that actually happen? And then I went and go checked, and I was like, oh yeah, that did actually happen. Shoot, and I feel like now that I said I probably remember it, I just don't. It just didn't recall. I don't know, but I was like, that's a weird cut to kind of put in this book. Even Kate was like, I don't even know who that is. So, but regardless, that happens, and they meet, and Cable gets who he wants and pushes off to the next part of his plan. Meanwhile, we get a little tidbit at the end of the story uh, with this cult of X, as I called it. But it's basically a cult that is one of the cults that has sprung up around the Dawn of X time that has been hinted at or had been talked about in other books, in other X books. So I'm assuming Cable's going to be, dealing with something like that, which would kind of make some sense given what started him out on his whole journey anyway, because there was that whole side thing with the child that, which is why that's directing. They're just bringing back that back up. So overall, like I said, it was a pretty good read, even with the Deadpool stuff. I'm not the biggest Deadpool fan, but that part was kind of amusing. And this book in general is a pretty cool read. So more than both Agent 70 and I both expected as we were talking beforehand, or just a minute ago.
Yeah, it's definitely a pleasant surprise. Definitely that. So, it's funny. I actually was in a comic book store earlier in the week. I happened to be passing through, and in a different part of New York City that I'm not in very often. And I made a remark about how Cable's actually a pretty entertaining read, and I was looking forward to this issue. So, we'll see. I don't know how many more converts we're going to get to this, but it seems like Cable has kind of moved up the charts for us, huh?
Yeah. We don't even know how long it's going to stay like this. Also, so
Right.
like if it comes out of this arc and continues to be compelling, then yeah, we'll see. But
I mean, I think we're going to go right into Ten of Swords after this. So at
likely.
least for a little while, we're going to be getting crossover action, and we'll probably get that Cult of X stuff in the background.
For sure.
As these issues start to come out on a more regular basis, as the publishing schedule readjusts to our current normal. I don't want to say our new normal, just our current normal.
Yeah, fair enough. And yeah, or they might go the route of, well, we're gonna deal with this Cult of X stuff. At least put a pin in it. We'll put a fine line in this part of it, but just kind of keep them in the background for other stuff at the end of this arc, and then, like you said, go into Ten of Swords. Who knows? We'll see. Next up, though, we're kind of pretty much done with that. I guess we'll stay in the X corner. And you said you did read it, but you didn't have any notes for it. Excalibur number 11.
Well, go for it. I'll add I'll add whatever is necessary.
Sure. There's not much to say. So I saw an article about this, and I kind of agree with it. That was pretty much saying that this book is kind of evoking the spirit of the old Excalibur, and I think he's even in this particular issue is taking some taking something from Claremont. Although there's a person that gets brought up and that will probably that seems like it's about to come into play that did not come from Claremont, but I would assume Claremont probably used after they were came up. But there was part of me that was like, wait, did I even like what? I kind of forgot what happened in the last issue, like thinking I didn't even read the last issue, but I know I did, and I know that like it's been long enough. Like I think this did actually come out the 10 came out like actually last month, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I totally forgot what happened because that whole stuff in the beginning with Jubilee and Shogo and what happened to him was like, wait, when did that happen? And it's like, oh right, that was a thing. So, but that got smoothed over, and they're basically trying to get into the Citadel because they're still trying to complete their mission from the first issue, I guess, or from the first couple of issues, and put a gate in the Starlight Citadel, which is in Otherworld, and they're meeting resistance in the form of Saturnin for some odd reason. But that seems to be a thing that is going to come up next issue as to why, even though we have been getting some stuff with her in the last couple of issues, you know. But in this issue, I pretty much say in my notes that like I said, it does kind of feel like the Excalibur of old, but with more D&D, especially with how they're dressed and whatnot now. And that whole
I see them developing more and more, and who
Yeah.
they're interacting with in Otherworld.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm here for it. And also that externals thing, which I think we had a news article about a while back, that kind of is coming into play, which also involves the person that I alluded to a second ago, because apparently that is someone from Gambit's past, which I didn't. I put two and two together and at the last second because I had to do a little bit of reading about this person when they brought him up. Because I was like, why are they bringing up this person? Who is this person? I did not know. Come to find out that this is an old problem from Gambit. Not only that, but folks, let's just say if you're aware of the X-Men animated series and there was a particular episode involving Gambit and the Thieves Guild, this person pretty much shows up in a form there. But they're called by their designation and not by their name.
That's funny.
Because when I read that on the wiki, I was like, oh wait, so that means that this person is that person there, and sure enough, I couldn't find out that that was the actual case. I'm like, all right, bet we'll see where this is going, and so at the end of this issue, when we see that little, I almost called it an end credit scene, which is kind of sort of not, Gambit picks up a thing, in his lifting. In his borrowing of goods from the Citadel, that has to do with this person, which means that this person is probably going to come into play within the next issue or two and be a problem. Maybe there's going to be some tithing. We don't know. So, and I wonder if this person is going to be back in the world in that particular reason, and if that's going to have anything to do with what's eventually going on in what is still going on in Black Cat. Like, I wonder if that's even going to come into play there or not. Who knows? We'll see there.
I was about to say, it's one of those things, the wider world of the Thieves Guild, right?
Right. Because apparently this person has had, there's like, from what I was reading, it was like, yeah, it wasn't just the Thieves Guild where Gambit is from. Like, they were in Egypt also, which also ties to Apocalypse or whatever he's being called right now, and the whole externals, or excuse me, the High Lords and whatnot.
Right.
So that's going to be a thing that comes up, and that's actually going to be kind of interesting. So we'll see where that goes. But I enjoyed reading it. It was a fairly good read, and like I said, the callback to that is piquing my interest, even though it almost made me want to go back and read the issue where this person comes from, which was Gambit's old book. Which who
Hmm.
knew Gambit had a book? You know, well, actually I did. I never read it, but you know, I think Gambit had a series, or I don't know if it was a mini series or it was an ongoing that just didn't last that long. But yeah,
He's had a couple of series.
yeah, he did. But I think one of them was a mini though.
I think they've almost all been mini. To be honest, I think they've almost all been minis.
Maybe.
I don't think he's had a regular series, but I'm gonna jump down that Google um, rabbit hole and see. Um,
I feel like there's at least two. Yeah, and then and it's not counting what that last one with him and Rogue when they got married, but you know, like
right, I just
him by himself.
check out the publication. Right, I wanted to see the publication. You know, like where he's been. Um, he started in three ongoing series. The first lasted 25 issues with
Okay.
two annuals
Huh.
from February 29 to February '01. The second lasted 12 issues and ran from November '04 to August '05. And the third series lasted 17 issues from August 2012 to September 2013. Interesting.
There are people
At
that
least
love them from Gambit.
that's what the wiki says.
Right.
That's what the wiki says. So,
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure, surely most of those, if not all of those, are on Marvel Unlimited. This is not a
I was gonna
plug. We're
say,
just saying.
it sounds familiar. That's the worst part. It's like, oh, you know what? I'm starting to jog the old memory banks there when they talk about like when those books were released. So
Hmm. Yeah, like I said, I do. I feel like I remember one of those, but I never read it. I was like, oh, okay, he's got a book now. Weird. Let's
oh
see.
yeah, definitely on Marvel Unlimited.
Yeah, I figured one of them was, but I didn't know if all three of them were. So that which would make sense, you know. Give it all.
Now I'm remembering these covers.
uh, you get jogging the memory, folks. You gotta sometimes you gotta do that when you get, you know, not even when you get older. Sometimes when you're young too.
Yeah, I mean some of them don't look familiar at all. I'm like, when did this come out?
Right.
So
But that
you
being the
know,
case, yeah, I don't know if you have anything else on this Excalibur book.
nope,
Cool.
nope.
Well, in that case, you
Move.
wanna pop out one?
All right, as President Bartlett would ask.
What's next?
I'll tell you what's next. Let's see here. I don't know if I want to finish off the X corner here. I actually want to jump to something different.
Okay, sure.
Um, do you want to cover the Empire corner this week?
Sure, we can get there. We'll get back to the X corner from that one way or the other.
Right. So the first thing I'd mention is Lords of Empire Swordsman #1.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was a really interesting read, and it definitely filled in, as we discussed earlier, a lot of the gaps that I guess we might have felt from Koi's and even the swordsman's motivations behind this whole um, revenge plot, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's essentially what it is. It's a plot of revenge upon uh, the 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 alien races that had abused it, historically, and then further expanding their revenge upon all uh, mammalian or even warm-blooded life forms, basically.
The meat, yes.
Right, the meat. Actually, yeah, because they could be cold-blooded too. Yeah, just the meat. They did call them the meat.
Mm-hmm.
So, but saying the meat kind of makes me hungry. So I was just going to avoid that.
Yeah, too late for me, but yeah.
But yeah, it was a really interesting read. Fun tidbit. The writer behind this kind of fell into comic book writing as a PhD in I believe English Lit, but I'm not sure. Alex Packnadell.
Oh, okay.
I did see an article on that, and I skimmed it very quickly. I meant to bookmark it so that I would read it over the weekend. But
Oh yeah, if you still have that link, send it to me. We put it in the show notes.
right, definitely an interesting route. I thought about it because Roddykat is wont to wax negatively poetic about how people get comic book writing gigs.
Because
So
it's true.
So
But in that case, like, okay, no, but see that in that case, that's different though. My problems has been people of already celebrity status just getting a book. Just like,
right.
hey, here's a rock singer, and now he's got a whole line of books. Or, here's this person who is an actor, or just a person who's popular in pop culture, and now they got a book. Like, if they're coming from it from that angle, like I have no problem with that. At least, you know, that's a closer stretch than some of these other puppets that I've actually had a problem with.
Right. It's actually an older article. I'll put the link in whatchamacallit, clickbait, I guess.
Yep.
So yeah, it's from back in May. So obviously this is supposed to be. This would have been. Actually, wait, is this May of last year? I'm just looking for the date on this. I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I'm looking for the date that this article is published. It's a Siffy Wire
Okay.
article. And I don't see the date of the article.
Yeah, sometimes they don't do that. Yeah.
Oh, no, I see it. No, it is. It's a year old.
Okay.
So he's been for a little while. I mean, doing indie stuff. And I guess this is his mainstream, or at least my introduction to his mainstream work.
Sure.
So.
But yeah, but this issue though, that being, there's a couple of weird things that happened in this book to me. The first part that I'm about to say is not the weird part. In that, as Agent 70 says, like, we kind of get a little bit more of the background. Like, it kind of filled in the missing gaps of Coy's attitude that coming into Empire, and why his motivations are as they are. This book definitely gives a little bit of background under the guise of what supposedly is a story from the past that kind of sort of, I guess, comes out of a West Coast Avengers story that I vaguely remember, because there was a footnote there about it. I was like, I vaguely remember that thing happening. But we find Coy and the Prime Kotati, aka Swordsman, for the shorthand. Back on Earth, back in the day, to do a thing involving the Swordsman and his relations to his human counterpart, which he's still tied to. And the troubles they're in, but so they do that, and then at the end of this, we kind of get a little bit more about, well, now we see Coy's, now we see why Coy feels the way he does about the meat and, everything that's going on now, even though this was something that seemingly is from the past. We're not entirely sure how long it was, but we know that this was a younger Coy. Like, it looks like maybe a teenager, and we do know that Celestial Quest actually that happened. So we do.
It kind of dates what I was going to say. The reference that we get from the art actually places it during the Marvel Now era.
Right.
I wanted to mention that we see Cap and Iron Man in their Marvel Now outfits.
Right. So I was going to mention that for the other thing that gets brought up, which brought me a genuine chuckle, because while Cap and Iron Man was talking, and Tony was like, so they broke in here for the sword, and Cap's like, wait, are you telling me that you're upset that they didn't take one of your armor? and Cap makes a joke. It was like, don't worry, just leave the back door open, and maybe they'll take Silver Centurion, which brought me a genuine laugh.
Yes. Especially given some of the toy news that we got this week as well.
Exactly. So and I saw the toy news before I even read this, so I was like, that just gave me an extra good chuckle. So. But that being the case, the other weird thing about it is that Alchemix shows up, which, not a surprise, because it is a company in the world of Marvel. It's just weird to see it outside of a Spidey book.
Yeah.
So, but then again, it's like the usual, kind of some of the usual suspects are not on the table anymore. Like AIM's not what it is anymore, and Hydra's gone, so it wouldn't be probably them. So, and it would make sense that Alchemix, being a company that does whatever it does, would be interested in, this setting.
Exactly. And and the whatchamacallit, and the usual culprit Roxxon has had its issues over in the pages of Immortal Hulk.
Exactly. And yeah, to which I'm assuming that Roxxon's probably either no more or definitely
Right,
on the
depending
skids.
upon timing of the story.
Right.
Depending upon the timing of the story, Roxxon was either in the throes of bankruptcy, or
Well,
or it
well,
all
if
depends on when this happened.
well, that's what I'm saying. Just like you said, if it's doing Marvel now, they were still up and thriving. Um, so if that's the case, then yeah, they were still around and doing things. It just so happened that they tend to use the Alchemax in the story instead of Roxxon because of later, I guess.
Right. I was about to say long before whatchamacallit. Although, it does seem more like or at least the later stuff, it does seem more like whatchamacallit, that it's more recent history, given the animosity. Although like we said, I guess ultimately we don't know how long these particular plans have been in effect. How long they've been developing these plans that lead to Empire.
Which
So
also brings up the part of a problem because if it was back then, why did it take them so long to enact? Well, actually, no, that can be explained away. Because part of me was like, well, wait, if that's the case, why did it took them so long? But plants that need to be cultivated, like plants, kind of take a while. So it still stands a reason. So
right.
it's a justified reason. But
Right.
it did have me
So
think about it for a second.
all right. So all right. So that's, I guess, one corner of, or at least one part of the story behind Empire. The other Empire book that came out this week. Actually, there's two. I don't know if you read
I didn't read Captain
Captain
Marvel.
Marvel.
No.
All right. I'll just touch upon Captain Marvel number 20. Um, the mission seems to happen. The mission that is central in this book seems to happen before the events of Empire number 4. Carol and her accuser corps, her accuser deputies, continue to try to clear her newly discovered half sister Lori L's name. Meanwhile, Lori L is getting into some trouble on Earth. So there's still some more uh, Carol Danvers as Kree accuser shenanigans to be had in the next issue.
And once again, maybe she's worth it.
What's that?
And once again, maybe she's worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Uh,
Okay. Interesting.
yeah, exactly. I was about to say,
Sorry. Reading a note from the background, folks.
Yeah, Tim Dog 98 just messaged us something that we both found interesting, since we literally jinxed ourselves just now. The other Empire book that I would mention is Empire X-Men number 4,
Yes.
which, and without going into all the specifics, I found it surprisingly funny as a wrap up to this limited series. It's a 4-issue limited series, and it went into some very, very odd directions prior to this 4th issue. It actually leaves us with more questions about the Scarlet Witch than we had before. So, um, other than the fact that the issues, the problems that come up in the first 3 issues of this book, um, are essentially taken care of in a very neat fashion. It's just a very, very fun and very, surprising wrap that they put onto this limited series.
Yeah. Like, just like I was saying prior to the show, they pretty much put the genie back in the bottle. But it was also kind of weird because even with the noted time frame that this came under, that wasn't really clear at the beginning of this miniseries. Like when the initial catalyst for this, which was Scarlet Witch, doing what she did, and going to Doctor Strange, and then jump into the X-Men being on Genosha, where everything had already popped off or was popping off. Like, it wasn't really sure. Like I said, the time frame wasn't really sure, but now we actually got that cleared up, and it's still kind of weird. I'm like, so wait, all of that happened within a month's time, So one, how long has the X-Men been there in relation? Well, we kind of get a sense of that, but like I guess kind of did anything happen in between that moments because when they found out it was like, all right, we did what we had to do, and it's going to take a while for things to kind of to put itself back. So in that time, we actually obviously have this where the X-Men come in and things pop it off. And since this is a brand new, since this is a thing with Empire and in relation to that, like it was clearly recent, but like I said, that whole time frame thing was kind of weird at first.
Right. But it was a nice little framing device for the
Yes.
story. That was an excellent little framing device for the story. So
Right.
at least, like I said, it was just surprisingly funny the way it wrapped up. So
I mean, it was definitely a nice, neat way to kind of like, all right, well, fine, all this stuff that in the beginning and that got brought back up kind of already happened, and we're just waiting for the time to run out, and then there we go. So everything that happened in between that was kind of what it was, and I'm like, all right, yeah, that was definitely a neat framing device, but it was like I said in the beginning, it was just like, well, that's weird because you were thinking it was like closer together than what it was up until this.
Agreed.
So, but yeah, I enjoyed this as a potential click of the week. It was fun. That whole bit with Ilyana and right before things went back to normal, quote unquote, was kind of funny. And that thing with which I thought so there was this whole zombie kid that was kind of at the in the middle of all of this, and something gets dealt with that, which I thought was a thing that the X corner was trying to avoid, but also they deal with it in a manner that makes a lot of sense.
What do you mean?
Meaning, so.
I mean, what do you mean they were trying to avoid it? That's what I wasn't quite clear
Well,
on.
that's what I'm trying to get to. Because the whole, hey, we don't want to resurrect anybody whose bodies is still who we don't know whether it's dead or not.
It was dead.
I know that, but that's what I'm saying. But like even with the stuff with Kate, which we still don't know how that stuff's gonna play off, even if they call any attention back to it. With they tried with her bodies and nothing happened, but those bodies still might be around somewhere. That situation, that's kind of the thing that they basically said in the resurrection program. Like, no, we need to know whether the bodies are what the state of this body is before we resurrect another one. But like I said, I understand why they did it in this way because that's a zombie body and they're dead anyway, and that body was going to get taken care of when all of this other stuff. So it was a neat way to do it, is what I'm saying, but it was still kind of weird for me for a second because it was like, well, wait, they didn't want to actually do this, but they just went ahead and resurrected them because knowing that, that the zombie body was going to get taken care of.
No, I was going to say they actually say that he'd been dead for a while because remember the whatchamacallit, the island of Genosha, all that stuff that had happened several years back at this point.
Right, and then that brings up the thing was like, well, if they brought him back, why didn't couldn't they bring up back all the other mutants of Genosha? Or
that's
have they?
I was about to say, I think that's the plan.
Yeah.
That's why, if you remember X Factor, there's like a line of people who are petitioning to have their loved ones brought back.
Right, but I didn't assume that was from Genosha. I just said that was just in general, just out in the world, right. Outside of that.
Right. So I think that's just in general. There's just a line of people who probably have resurrection requests, and they have to process them. That's actually been an underlying plot device in several of the X books. Including the Marauders with Katie Pryde,
right.
with Kate Pryde. That is. I totally just mashed up all of her names. I called her Katie Pryde.
You know what? I feel like somebody's probably going to do it.
Pryde, right. It's not Kitty Pryde. It's not Kate Pryde. I'm calling her Katie Pryde. Shout out to Katie Nolan from Sports with a question mark and ESPN.
I feel like somebody has actually called her Katie. It might have been if it wasn't Deadpool, it was probably like Franklin or somebody. I feel like somebody has actually called her Katie at some point recently. but I'm probably wrong. Regardless, moving right along.
Did you happen to read Thor?
No,
Oh no!
I still need to catch up on that because this is the end of the arc, right? Or is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and a lot of people are kind of confused because there's a big bad that was really, really hyped up, and the big bad kind of gets taken out in this issue, but there's
So
some
it's a
other
beginning
stuff
arc.
that happens. What's that?
So it's a beginning arc.
Right. So whatchamacallit, because if you think about it, they sort of did the same, at the end of the day, a lot of these villains come back. So I thought this was just an epic issue. It might be a quick end for the Black Winter, or is it? We'll see. It was just, but there is some epic stuff that happens with Galactus in this issue. It's beautifully done. It's so beautifully done. So, I can't wait for the next issue. Although they're definitely veering into a different territory after in the next issue. They'll be telling different types of stories, I think, with the different artists. So we'll see. But yeah, Thor #6, potential click of the week for me.
Nice.
I mean, we can start to move into rapid fire at this point, I think.
Well, I was gonna say, do you want to hit like one more before we did that? Because I feel like there's one potential one we could probably put a minute or two in. Yeah.
All right, let's just do Avengers.
Yeah. So Avengers #35. So, and I've read an article. Well, I didn't read the article. I pulled an article, which I probably the article seemed to make this a bigger thing than what it seemed to be. To what there was ended up being, I should say. But so we're still in the Age of Khonshu thing, and that whole thing's going on. We still don't know what the time frame is in relation to Empire and or anything else that's going on in the world. But that's comics, that kind of happens. And I say that because of a character shows up here that may or may not be still around after the events of Empire, and I'm still may or may not be upset about that if that is the case. But regardless, this kind of harkens back to the 1 million BC before the stuff. And I just have in my notes that, so basically the Khonshu is upset that the 1 million BC crew didn't let him into the club. And that's what it seemed like it was framed in part of this. I was like, obviously there should be something more going on here. Or there is something more going on here with the Mephisto stuff. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they put that in as a tie, I was like, well, that's a little petty, but at the same time, sure, okay, this is Khonshu we're talking about. That's full of petty. But there's also a amusing thing, as I know Agent 70 picked up on as a sports fan with Hulk.
Right.
And the biggest thing on here that I'm glad that was finally addressed, which I know there was an article that actually addressed this at some point also, but who the hell left let Tony Stark with a baby? Much less a baby with the power of the Star Brand. Like, even he says that's a bad idea. I'm like, and granted, the weird part about it is like Tony's being a little bit more manic than normal. Actually, he's, actually not even normal, because he's not normally manic, or at least historically he's not normally as manic as he felt like in this issue. But nevertheless, like, he was kind of freaking out. It was like, oh, this whole thing is whatever, and the Avengers are not a family. This is a job, and who in the world left me with who put me with a baby? Like, I'm the last person who shouldn't have be in charge of a baby. And I'm sitting here like,
there's a lot of rapid fire monologuing and dialogue here.
And I was like,
comes to Stark.
No,
because
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and I was like, you know what? He's actually right. I agree. Why? But but that whole thing is what it is. And there is, like I said, we get a little bit more with the whole, I want to call that dude Lobo Mephisto, that comes after Khonshu, because apparently we find out Khonshu's been killing Mephistos. I guess including the one from Prime or from 616, I guess. I don't know if he's actually dead or not, or because that's the whole thing. But he's been killing Mephistos, and then like I said, and then the whole side thing with Moon Knight going after the baby who's in the care of the Avengers, and apparently the baby actually gets a name now, or potentially gets a name, thanks to Tony. But then Moon Knight catches up to him because they know the country wants the baby for because country wants power, and Tony seemingly almost gives the baby up to Moon Knight, but then gets whisked away by Carol, like they're on a honeymoon. Because Tony's still kind of freaked out for whatever odd reason, which is clear because of what's happened, because he was in the past with the 1 million BCs, and he kind of gets what's going on to a point because of the whole Mephisto thing, and I guess the team's in relation to the original team, I guess, which is still kind of a bummer to me because I was like, okay, so they did this thing, but then again, they did it with the Avengers 1959 stuff. So if I'm gonna be mad, I was gonna be mad before this anyway. But yeah, that was pretty much the crux of the story. Outside of the fact that T'Challa's still around and he's kind of still being badass because he kind of rolls up on Khonshu and is just like, "Look, one of us is gonna get beaten down, and it ain't gonna be me." So. And that's where we leave the end of this book, which is going to continue next issue, with a seemingly fight with T'Challa and Khonshu. But it was a good read, though. I enjoyed it. Like I said, and there was of course a reminder of AVX that Tony brings up. Like, of course, because Aaron did it. Jason Aaron wrote it, so that makes sense. But. That was one somebody was probably going to bring up regardless, because I was like, why didn't the X-Men just kind of do something similar to this? But yeah. Anyway, you had anything else to say about it, or
no?
All right. Well, then I guess we go to rapid fire.
Rapid fire it.
Let me go ahead and get my 1 or 2 books out of the way, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Spider-Man Woman number 3. I believe you read this also.
I did.
So this was cool. I enjoyed it. This was definitely a lot of action in this issue. And we find out at the end of this, without giving too much away, that Jessica and company end up in a place that I either forgot or did not know she had ever been to. But given her history, that makes sense. And we come to find out that the stakes have gotten a little bit more personal in Jessica's dealing with this benefactor of hers and her daughter, which they're trying to help by hook or by crook. Because they spend this whole issue being chased by people for what reasons we're still not entirely clear on. That seems like it's a little bit more than just ransom, because her benefactor's rich, and we come to find out that he has motivations that he did not tell, or he had more motivations that he did not tell Jessica about, that apparently he and his daughter already know about, that pretty much come out at the end of this. So we're gonna see what's gonna happen with that going into the next issue. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to bring up, but okay, sure, let's do this.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild and outlandish reveal. So I was definitely taken off guard by that reveal at the end of this book. So I'm anticipating what we're going to read in the next issue. But this miniseries obviously affected in terms of its publication timing by COVID. There's a big gap between issues 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And now we're just getting to 3, so a little bit of the momentum has been lost. But at the same time, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I wasn't sure about Jessica Drew's connection to this particular place in Marvel as well. But I freely admit to not knowing that much about the character prior to her kind of reintroduction by Bendis into the New Avengers. Um, she was kind of an old standby character that really hadn't seen a lot of action in costume for a long time. So delving back into this deeper Marvel canon uh, will prove to be interesting, at least with Marvel Unlimited at the hand. So
Yeah, yeah. I've always liked Jessica, and she's always been a good character. And the fact that Ben just brought her back out, and I'm like, all right, give her some prominence. And I'm like, all right, that's one good thing in this corner out of the many bad things I could probably say. Um, but yeah, this I'm also looking forward to seeing where this goes to next. Next up is Transformers versus the Terminator #2. Um, so I'm going to pick a knit real quick. So this is taking place back in 1984, when G1 first started, and right after the Ark crash lands into Earth, and there's some resurrection happens. But there's a little bit of a difference because now Sarah Connor is involved, and the Terminator, the T-800 to be specific, is involved in bringing the Cybertronian war to Earth. There was a little animosity at first, but the Terminator is now kind of working with the Autobots for the time being. A Transformer shows up that was definitely not coming up, that did not come up. In fact, a couple came up that wasn't in G1. One specifically, RC, which is a character that we've talked about recently with the War for Cybertron stuff, or at least I brought it up. But yeah, RC shows up, and she wasn't there at first. But then there's another one, another female Autobot that showed up, and I'm like, I'm fairly certain this one was not also there during that time. But hey, this is a crossover book, and there are things changed, for crossover reasons. So I get it. But yeah, so RC's there. She's kind of helping out with Bumblebee and stuff like that. As the teams seem to go in G1, the Decepticons are pretty much trying to find Energon to leave Earth. They end up at Cyberdyne Systems. Starscream's doing the Starscream thing, being skullduggerous, I guess, if for lack of a better word. I don't even know if that's even a word. But yeah, they were doing G1 stuff, and the Autobots, were like, well, we got to stop the Decepticons. And of course, now they have the T-800 and Sarah Connor helping them out. So instead of Sparkplug and Buster, we have Sarah Connor and Bumblebee kind of floating around, getting into stuff. We also have numerous callbacks to both the Terminator series and specifically G1 series, because Wheeljack says like an Optimus Prime line that he says in general. Optimus Prime says, I think, a couple of his lines, or one line that Megatron says in their first fight, in the G1 cartoon. So there's a couple of references to some cartoon stuff in there. Sarah Connor pretty much makes a reference to her, her canon fate, let's just say, with an amusing reference. When she's talking to Bumblebee, and yeah, some stuff happens. But at the end of this issue, the arc gets a little, let's say, ventilation, which of course did not happen in G1. So and we don't know what's going to happen from that, except for the fact that there might be some folks off the table. Going into the next issue. We'll see, though. But it's a pretty fun read, though. I will definitely say that, despite the little nit that I picked, and the fact that RC gave the Terminator a weapon, that's bound to kind of not be good. It's a bad thing. Anyway, it's fun. Last but not least, G.I. Joe #7, and I realize it's not as quick of a talk that I'm doing. So my apologies for that. G.I. Joe #7. This is also another book that's been affected by COVID, because the last issue of this book, I feel like, came out a couple of months ago, if I'm not mistaken, or at least that's what it feels like. But the short strokes is this is an seemingly important flashback issue that has to deal with the formation of GI Joe in the context of this world, which had been taken over slowly had been taken over by Cobra, and GI Joe kind of started as an underground resistance thing, or at least actually it was above ground resistance thing, but ended up going underground because we get the appearance of Duke, who was pretty much taken out at the first issue, dealing with Scarlet, who like I said, has been dealing with apparently coming back from the war and PTSD, and her finally coming into the fold under GI Joe while it's being formed, by Duke and Hawk. 5 years ago, according to the thing. But it's an interesting read if you're interested in what's going on in the GI Joe. That's not the Hammer version going on, also at IDW. And that's it for me.
All right. All right. So let's get this rapid fire back to being rapid. Batman number 97. In this issue, Batman escapes the Joker's latest trap during this Joker War event. The Clown Hunter, a new character that was introduced a few issues back, is throwing a wrench into the Joker's and Punchline's plans. Harley, as in Harley Quinn, provides a way for Bats to detox from the new Joker toxin that he's been hit with. So this is essentially another chapter in the Joker War, moving the story along. Next up is Captain America number 22. Selene has the upper hand versus Cap, Falcon, and Bucky. What's interesting about this is that Selene is also a member, or at least a part of Krakoa. So it's really interesting to see this particular longtime member of the inner circle of the Hellfire Club, and just literally a psychic vampire of a mutant who's been around since maybe not the dawn of time, but quite close to it. It's interesting to see, some of the more ground level heroes trying to take her on. So Selene does have the upper hand versus Cap, Falcon, and Bucky. We find old Sharon Carter steps in for the save, wearing some armor that has some emotional baggage attached to it. So that's what I leave you with. If you're interested in reading it, you will see what I mean. Next up is Maestro, number 1. This book left me intrigued, and it actually may make me pull the physical book after reading this. I actually did pick up this week because I just felt like picking it up, a copy of Maestro number 1. The art is solid on this book. The fact that it is Peter David, the original creator of the Maestro, who is filling in this gap in continuity, actually helps, and it leaves me wanting more. And that is one of the best things you could ever write about a book. Talked about Thor. Wolverine number 4 is the last one for me. Logan walks into a trap, and we have the right sound effect for this, if I could just find it very quickly. Where are you, Admiral? Where are you? Where have I placed you in my new layout here? It's so funny. Goodness gracious, this is so funny. I can't actually find it. Here we go. It's a trap. Thank you, Admiral Akbar. So Logan finds himself in the trap and is taken down by Omega Red. Damn it, they're trying to make me buy the Marvel Legends figure of Omega Red. So that's it in a nutshell. So that is it for me this week. I guess we can do our clicks of the week.
But before you hit that, one question. That Maestro book, I obviously, with what's going on in Immortal Hulk, and that being probably one of the only other figure folks that have not shown up there, are we to assume that this, whatever this is laying the groundwork, is some of this is probably going to get picked up there?
Not as I can tell. Ultimately, what this is going to go off of what Peter David had established in the Hulk Future Imperfect storyline. I don't know how Immortal Hulk is going to play into any of this.
Because I think Electros actually
Obviously,
has been mentioned in Immortal Hulk, but I don't remember.
but ultimately, we will see if that is brought up at all. But I don't see it at this point in in the telling of this particular story. So,
Okay. Clicks of the week.
clicks of the week.
And we already got two clicks from our erstwhile cohorts. We got Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Too Long a Sacrifice #2 from Dirt, which is a book that I plan on reading sometime this weekend. And from Tim, we got Cable 3, because I believe he said something about the Cable #3 had the Cable Deadpool reunion, even though it was a Kid Cable version, so he was going to go with that.
Okay.
You got yours?
Yeah, I do actually. I do actually. It's the book that had the it's the book that had a moment that evoked expletives from me, in a good way. So I'm going to go with Thor #6.
Okay. Interesting. And for myself, I think the one that's actually pulling me, there's actually a couple of decent picks, but I think the one that's actually pulling me is probably Empire Expand #4. Because despite them putting it back in the bottle, it was an enjoyable read, and it was kind of amusing, especially with, I assume, a couple of things that's probably going to bear out in the rest of the X books at some point, or at least in the other X books at some point, I'm assuming.
Sure.
Because we forgot to mention that part, but that's fine. So yes, those are the clicks of the week, folks. We are going to get into the news section, but first, an ad read.
I was about to say, were you referring to some of the questions that we might have about the Scarlet Witch?
There's that also, but
okay.
but no, also that part with Beast, with the thing that he stole, and
oh yes, well yeah, with the horticulture. Yeah, I mean,
right.
We completely left out any mention of how the horticulture played into the resolution of the story.
Right. But you can read it for yourself, and it's a good read. So go check it out if you're interested, and if you've been keeping up with that book.
Right. So our first ad of the night is for Wink, the personalized wine club. Wink is a world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to Cabernet to Torronté, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Ever try an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your taste and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink Wines through CSPN. Do it today. And we move into the news.
And we're starting off with the cinematic news, as we tend to do every week about this time. First off, Swamp Thing Stars celebrates the canceled DC Universe's show's CW debut. So the CW will be airing the short-lived Swamp Thing series this fall. And one of the stars is making sure that the audience knows when to tune in. Derek Mears, who portrays the titular character, took to Twitter to announce the good news. Quote unquote, "See you October 6th," Mears wrote, referring to the premiere date. Swamp Thing will debut with a 90-minute premiere episode. So yeah, folks, the DC Universe show Swamp Thing is going to be aired on, or a season of Swamp Thing is going to be aired on CW. Maybe from this another season will come out of it if it picks up. Who knows? But I guess synergy. Next up,
Birds of Prey's Jumi Smollett said she would love to return as Black Canary for a TV series centered on the character. She says it's no secret how much she loves Black Canary. She told that to Variety while promoting her current HBO series Lovecraft County. I know that it's out now. She says it's a dream character and was a dream to play her. If the dynamics fell in the right way, she would absolutely do it in a heartbeat. Smollett also said that she would want to work with Lovecraft Country creator Misha Green on the project, saying she would follow Misha wherever she leads her.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that Lovecraft County show. I may actually check it out despite not having much of a affinity for the person whose stuff it's made from or whose stuff is referenced. But I've heard good things about the show, and I like Journey Smollett, so just also what's up. Also, that Birds of Prey movie is on HBO Max, if we hadn't said so before, so you can go check it out right now. Next up, though, Aquaman 2 will have touches of horror, says director James Wan, which, if you know James Wan's stuff, that's not a surprise. In fact, I think the first Aquaman kind of did with the trench stuff. But regardless, Aquaman 2 director James Wan says the upcoming sequel will have touches of horror. The first Aquaman movie, also directed by Wan, was released in 2018. It was the first ever solo live-action movie starring the oft-marked and unfairly comic book hero. We know who's all in it, blah, 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 blah. Despite decades of jokes about the character, Aquaman wouldn't manage to gross over $1 billion. TLDR, sure, I guess, let's see. Oh, there was a DC Fandom Q&A session with James Wan, and he responded to a fan question asking if there's going to be any horror touches in Aquaman 2, to which he has said yes. And akin to the aforementioned trench sequence is in the first movie. Next up.
All right, next up, in Wonder Woman 1984, Kristen Wiig's Barbara Minerva will transform from a sweet geek into a formidable supervillain, the Cheetah. During a set visit attended by CBR, producer Charles Roven promised Barbara will get nasty, quote unquote, as she becomes Cheetah, and revealed how Wiig landed the role. They felt strongly about the fact that Kristen was going to be able to do the Barbara Minerva that we meet, the person who's not very visible, even though she wants to be because she's a geek. Roven explained she could give that character both the humor and the warmth that Diana sees in her, and that we in the audience see in her, so that hopefully we'll like her because Diana invests in her. Okay.
I feel like, I don't know why, in reading that, I was thinking, okay, is this going to be akin to the Batman Returns, where the Catwoman, with Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, how her turn came about, even though despite part of that being...
falling out the window.
Exactly, all of that, and her abrupt change because of that. So
definitely sounds similar.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see when that happens. DC Fandom, speaking of, first look to air on the CW next week. A new teaser for DC Fandom reveals that fans will get their first glance at the virtual event on the CW, which kind of harkens back to back in the day when they used to have those shows on during the fall. I don't know if this is the same thing, but Agent 7 knows what I'm talking about. Those shows where they were right before cartoons would start in the fall. They used to have these preview shows of all the new cartoons that was going to be on the network. I used to love those. Sadly, there's no recordings that have ended those, I don't think. But regardless, this kind of feels like something like that. I don't know if that's actually the case. But regardless, opting to skip this year's San Diego Comic-Con, Warner Brothers instead chose to organize their own we know about DC Fandom at this point. So yeah, there's a teaser thing out there about this. But there's also more news. Next.
Right, so CBR has put together a list of the don't miss movie panels for DC Fandom. Among them, as I wait for this awful page to load, because there is a lot of information contained on it, apparently.
If you're watching the video, I'm scrolling through it right now.
Right.
Although this might be changed given the next news, but nevertheless.
Right. Well, it looks like I probably scroll past. All right, so we have Wonder Woman 1984, August 22nd, from 10 to 10:25 a.m., and The Flash, and Suicide Squad, and so on and so forth. Check out the schedule as Roddykat goes through it. And Black Adam,
Yeah,
Shazam, it's all there.
It's all there.
The
And
with his
exactly.
fancy new symbol or fancy new red inspired logo.
Have you seen? You've watched Shazam, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Did you like it?
It was okay.
Okay. Anyway,
DC. I think it's some of the kid actors that got on my nerves. Although I definitely was a fan of the little girl from This Is Us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Gotcha. Yeah. One of these days I'll end up still watching.
The smart. Oh, I was about to say, if you haven't watched it yet, there's a smart alecky kid that I literally want to reach through the screen and punch in the face.
Is it the Freddy dude?
Probably.
I suspect, yeah, because I don't know. Even in the comic book, the recent comic book, it was like, okay, yeah, there's still some of that I kind of get, but sure.
Right. I'm an older dude. You know, I'm literally in my middle age. I want to reach through the screen and punch that kid in the face.
Wow, you're middle aged. I don't know what you're saying about your life, but okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like I freely admit that I am no longer like a young whippersnapper, but I definitely want to reach through that screen and just knock that kid out.
Like it was like I'm older than you. I don't feel like I'm middle aged yet, but that's that's neither here nor there. But I also get that sentiment because I think I know who you're talking about, even from the trailers. Anyway, DC updates full fandom schedule, splits events into 2 days, and this came out yesterday as of this recording. Happy birthday. DC Fandom, the pop-up digital convention cobbled together in the wake of COVID-19 crisis, is set to bring fans on. Blah, 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 blah. Regardless, it was an update saying, hey, Warner Brothers announced on Wednesday that due to fan demand, I highly doubt that, the company will split Fandom into 2 days. That's right, there's a second dome now, arriving in mid-September. In order to, quote unquote, super serve our fans and provide the best possible experience, DC Fandom has been expanded into 2 global events, said Warner Brothers reps in a news release. The first on August 22nd, so that's still going on, DC Fandom Hall of Heroes, and the second on-demand experience in DC Fandom Explore the Multiverse on September 12th, where fans can create and curate their own adventures. So, in other words, while the weekend's events will be live streamed, September's blowout will allow fans to create their own curated lineup of content. The biggest panels are some of the ones that were mentioned by Agent 70 in the last one. And of course, there's the game news about the Suicide Squad game that we've already talked about, and so on and so on. Especially given the recent news that we talked about last week with the DC layoffs. This feels kind of in poor taste, and also feel like I doubt that the fans demanded it that much. Like I know there are DC fans out there, but I seriously doubt that that's the case.
They may have just asked for more space in between things, and that just forced it into being a 2-day event.
I guess, yeah, because I mean, no one told them to make a one. No one told them to make a 24-hour event. Like we've been doing events for long enough that there's been spacing.
Right, that's what I suspect happened, and they just spun it that way. So, in any event, next up, Giancarlo Esposito joins Disney's DuckTales as a classic Mickey Mouse villain. Giancarlo Esposito, we know from The Mandalorian, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and Do the Right Thing, is joining the cast of Disney's reboot of DuckTales as the classic Mickey Mouse villain Phantom Blot. And my response is, who? So,
yeah, I don't know what it is, but if you're watching the video, you can see a picture of of who this person is, all Persona 4 like. Anyway, I need to catch up on that show because I hear good things about it. Next up, speaking of Mr. Giancarlo Esposito, how Giancarlo Esposito's biracial background informed his portrayal of Moff Gideon from The Mandalorian. So this is, I assume this is an interview. Yeah, in an interview with IndieWire, Esposito spoke about how his background as a biracial person influenced his portrayal of the Imperial leader. The interview notes that creator George Lucas took inspiration for the Empire from the y'all know what I'm saying, that spreads, I can actually say that word, I promise, that spread across Europe during the 20th century, and Esposito links these ideas to the disenfranchisement experienced by many people of color in the world today. And he bases as fascism, communism, for me, can be colorless because it really boils down to power and money. He then referenced Peter Cushing's portrayal of Grand Moff Tarkin in the original Star Wars film, noting his very direct delivery, cold essence, and always wanting to get what he wants in that film. So, and he also recalls stories told to him by his father of Mussolini's Italy under fascism and of fleeing the country to join the resistance fighters, a situation that deeply informs the history and mythology of the Star Wars universe. So, boom, there you go. Weirdly enough. Next up.
This is a spoiler alert if you're not caught up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The series ended last week, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ended up using a major MCU tie-in plot device to save the day. And it actually comes from, and this is enough of a spoiler for you to figure out what they might have done when I mentioned that the plot device comes from the Ant-Man movies. And obviously, if you watched Endgame, you know of what I speak. We are speaking specifically of the quantum realm, and I'm not going to spoil it for folks who still have not watched it or maybe are waiting for it to come out on Netflix at some point. So, ladies and gentlemen who are watching and or listening, just know that there are some quantum realm shenanigans afoot in that episode.
And also, Ant-Man and the Wasp is now promptly on Disney Plus, so you can watch it.
Yes, they finally migrated all of the MCU movies off of Netflix.
Yep. Olivia Wilde tapped to direct untitled female-centric Marvel movie at Sony. Sony Pictures is not only growing its universe of Marvel characters, but it's building on the female characters at the center of it, and looks to have landed one of the sought female directors in Hollywood. That is what this article is saying. That is not me. Sources tell Deadline that Olivia Wilde has closed a deal to direct and develop a secret Marvel film project revolving around a female character in the universe. While it's not confirmed, it is expected that the story will be centered around Spider-Woman. And here is where I will say it could also be Spider-Gwen. We don't know. Could be Silk, as Agent 7 mentioned Silk.
Right, we don't know. So, until we have more information, it's just speculation at best.
Right, but more likely it's probably Spider-Woman. Out of all of those, like, obviously Spider-Gwen is probably a more, at least at this point, popular choice, especially if you are, comic inclined and, enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse, I guess, also, But yeah. So Sony has no comment, and there's people behind it. Moving right along.
Right. So this next link is an older story from the Hollywood Reporter, but it bears mentioning here. It's about Bryan Singer's traumatic X-Men set. The movie, quote, created a monster. And without going too deep into it, I'm just going to lay out the thesis paragraph, which is the director's auteur style changed Hollywood's approach to superhero movies forever, but his on-set tantrums, a cast mutiny, and later allegations of sexual abuse have left a tarnished legacy as the X-Men franchise turns 20. So this is a Hollywood Reporter article. It's from July 31st, 2020. So feel free to follow the link in our notes and read the article.
Yeah, I had intended, the reason why I put it in there now is because I had intended to put it in here a couple of weeks ago, but I kept forgetting to put it actually in the lineup. And here you go. Now it's out of the way. Next up, New Mutants movie tickets officially on sale. No, really, actually. 20th Century Fox. 20th Century Studios There's no Fox in that anymore. Has announced that advance tickets for the long-awaited and long-delayed New Mutants movie has gone on sale as of a couple of days ago. The movie was initially conceived as part of Fox's X-Men universe, where it would introduce the new characters as part of the same convoluted timeline as the previous movies in the franchise. That is the article's assertion of this. And it goes on to say that, in fact, that Storm was supposed to appear as one of the main characters of the movie, but that idea was scrapped in the early forms of writing. And yeah, this movie's been through a lot, and we've been talking about it. And now movies are on sale, which brings us to the next article.
Nice. The New Mutants director states that he does think people should be going to the movies. Good word. Good word from this guy. Just goodness gracious, man. Oh my goodness.
Now, mind you, this is after because we had this article like probably a week or two ago saying that, yeah, he wouldn't mind if it came out on VOD, you know, in lieu of what's going on in the movies. But continue.
All right, so even in the face of the ongoing coronavirus COVID-19 health crisis, the New Mutants director Josh Boone feels it's still important for people to go to the movie theater. Yeah, maybe not so much.
Yeah. I think they got to him. Big movie got to him. They was like, shh, don't say that. Shut up. Shh, shh, shh. That's not, might not even be big movies. It might be Fox or whoever. You know, I don't know. Somebody got to him, though. Or maybe that's what he thought and just whatever. Who knows? But yeah, that's the way he feels. That's the way he feels. Josie and the Pussycats star wants to return for a spinoff. And this is one Donald Faison, who apparently was a part of that supposedly not great movie. I don't think I've ever finished it in full. But regardless, Donald Faison says he wants to do a Josie and the Pussycats spin-off movie focusing on the boy band Du Jour, which his character was a part of. The 2001 movie, based on the band that originally appeared in the Archie comics, was a sharp satire. That's the article's writer's word, but okay, sure. I doubt if that'll ever happen, but sure, more power to him in that one. Next up.
There is news that a cyberpunk sequel to 47 Ronin, which starred John Wick star Keanu Reeves, is in the works at Netflix. This is something that I'm not sure who's asking for it, but hey, you know, it's being developed to be helmed by actor-director Ron Yuan. Okay.
I mean, look, Keanu's still hot. He's got these other projects, that being Bill and Ted and The Matrix 4 and the numerous amounts of John Wick that's coming out. So what's one more thing, right? And who doesn't love Keanu? Come on. Wow.
He's actually got some Severus Snape vibes in some pictures from Bill and Ted, because he's like older with the long hair, the same kind of Snape hair.
That does look kind of weird, doesn't it?
You know,
I've seen.
Shout out to Binge Mode for you know the members of Binge Mode on Facebook who posted something funny about that, and it would be funny if they redid Harry Potter and had Keanu play Snape, and but with Ted Theodore Logan's voice. So you know, doing all sorts of these Harry Potter, you know, these Severus Snape quotes like, "Always, dude."
Oh God, that's a terrible thought. Oh wow.
But it's hysterically funny. Anyway, next up.
I was going to say, having just watched John Wick recently, as I said before the program, and I'm also seeing this as he just growling his way during that one part, talking about, you know, people were asking me if I was back and I didn't have a clear answer. Yeah, and I was like, just seeing him going through that motions, also doing, you know, playing Snape or something, just has a weird vibe to it. Anyway, I would actually kind of almost want to see that.
No, I was about to say you should see Always Be My Maybe on Netflix, where he's playing
he's playing one of the ex-boyfriends or something.
Yeah, exactly, the boyfriend, and he's
I saw a clip of it. Yeah, I saw a clip of it. I think I saw that specific clip actually. So yeah, that was kind of crazy. But actually, I don't know if I want to watch that movie or just I'm good with that. But I hear it's good. So regardless, the boys recruit Supernatural star Jensen Ackles for season 3, to the light of I'm sure a lot of Supernatural fans everywhere. I guess maybe not. Supernatural star Jensen Ackles has joined the boys. Season 3 is Soldier Boy, the first Suger to support, not the rapper, but the first super. So I guess he's Captain America. Ackles made the announcement on Instagram with a slide video about his first post-Supernatural job. I keep wondering what I'll do when Supernatural finally ends this year after 30 years. Then it hit me. He captioned the post. Excuse me. In the video, he mugs for the camera and strokes his beard until someone off camera tosses him a volume of The Boys by Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson. When he flips through the book open, Soldier Boy by Elvis Presley begins to play over the video, and Ackles smiles directly at the camera. Subtle, real subtle. Next up.
Nickelodeon has made the original unaired pilot for Avatar: The Last Airbender available for all to watch. Nerdist reports that the network released the pilot as part of a Twitch stream on Avatar's origin titled Avatar Creating the Legend. The low-budget episode, which debuts in the stream at around the 43-minute mark, was originally used to pitch the animated series to Nickelodeon executives, though it never actually aired on television. Instead, Avatar's pilot episode was made available for purchase on iTunes and some DVD sets, but for many, this is the first opportunity to watch the early sample footage. Okay.
Weirdly enough, I think I've actually seen this. I thought it was on Netflix, but I know I've seen this somewhere out there on, maybe it's on YouTube or something, but I feel like I've seen this, and I was like, I figured this was already out here, but there you go. If you're interested in seeing that, there you go. It's out there. Next up, last but not least in the cinematic news, surprise! Hulu added Thundercats to their catalog today, or yesterday. Actually, this was earlier today. Excuse me. So yeah. If you're of a certain vintage, you know the Thundercats cartoon, the original '80s one, not that one they did in 2011, which supposedly is not that bad. Well, it's not bad, just different. Then yeah, and if you want to see the original Thundercats in all its glory, it is going to be on Hulu. If it's well, actually, it's already there.
There now. I'm looking at it right now.
Yep. So
that's pretty interesting.
I don't have Hulu, but
looking at it right now.
Yeah. So there you go, folks.
60 episodes, 65 episodes each. That's crazy, man.
Yeah, that's what sounds about right. But yeah, it's out there, folks, for your perusal. Go check it out. Thundercats, ho! But I will also go ahead and say before we kick off into the comic book news that, and this is in the clickbait section, that someone as of like a week or so ago reanimated the Thundercats intro in CG, and it doesn't look bad. So you should go check that out. It's in, like I said, it's in the clickbait section of our show notes. And now we'll move over to the comic book news. And we're going to start off with best look at Leia's lightsaber in Star Wars Rise of Skywalker revealed. So there's a book coming up called Star Wars Lightsaber Collection that offers fans their best look at Leia Organa's blue lightsaber from Rise of the Skywalker, in addition to other lightsabers. So, hey, if you are a fan of the Star Wars stuff and the lightsabers in general, you can go check that out. But you can also see a picture of said lightsaber right there in the picture on the video version. Next up.
Next up is a mild spoiler for a book that we have been talking about for the last few weeks because it came out in rapid succession due to the scheduling of several books due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm referring to Empire X-Men numbers 3 and 4, which involved the unleashing of the New Mutants' worst nightmare, which is, spoiler alert, mild spoiler, since we did talk about it last week and this week. As the X-Men deal with the Kotati alien invasion in Empire X-Men number 3 and 4, Ilyana Rasputin, Magic of the New Mutants, reassumes her Darkchild form as a result of something happening that is event-specific here, or at least miniseries specific here. And we see what happens over the course of issues 3 and 4.
Yeah, again, I enjoyed that part of it. It was quite amusing. Marvel puts Power Pack back on track, according to this article from Newsarama, to the delight of one Matt Wang 97, I'm sure. But
Sure.
Ryan North and Nico Leon's Power Pack is back on track, with Marvel announcing that the limited series will debut in November. It was originally announced in January for an April 2020 debut, but because of COVID, it was postponed. And now they're back. Yeah.
I was about to say shout out to Wyclef because a lot of things are gone until November. Um,
Okay, that was good, but also boo.
because this is not the only comic book that will be back on track. I don't know if you have the news in here. I'm just scrolling through
I don't
the
think so.
quick
I
news
know.
real quick about. I did not have a chance to look at all of the solicitations for November, but I did read an article that Atlantis Attacks, the miniseries that we saw earlier in the year, is going to be back on track in November. So that will also return in November.
I'm glad you mentioned that because this is a good time to note that, hey, guess what, folks? November solicitations are out, and Marvel's just came out today at the time of this recording, now that I think about it. Or it came out yesterday, actually. No, it came out today.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it came out today because I
did.
saw like a quick notification, either through social media or something about it. So
yeah, there was they Newsarama does this thing where it's like, hey, yeah, solicitors are coming out at this point sometime today, and I guess giving people a heads up or something. I don't know. That's kind of weird. Just put them out. But yeah, so they did do that, and it's out, and Marvel's out. DC's been out for a couple of days, and a couple other people's solicitations, which, if you're so inclined, you can see also in the show notes. Avengers brings back the original version of the team in issue 35. We pretty much talked about this already. This is having to do with 1 million BC Avengers, but it wasn't to the effect that this article's laying out. It wasn't really that big of a deal. So we're just going to push on, and we kind of already talked about that book. Next.
Right. Mild spoiler alerts. In Avengers, a major MCU hero was just killed by their old teammate. So, yeah.
So yeah, we talked about this last week, kind of, but
right. Oh, and this is something that Roddykat is concerned about, and we will see if his concerns are well founded or not. So
Right.
basically, the swordsman basically puts a spike in the Black Panther. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and if you're asking yourself why were you, if that is the case, why you, Roddy, as a big Black Panther fan, was not freaking out about this. If you saw my notes last week, you can kind of see a little bit of it as it was. But as also as Agent 70 and I was talking earlier, we don't know whether this is actually a thing that's going to actually, whether that actually happened and they actually did get killed, or he just got ran through, and it's going to be fine. So we don't know that yet. But if as I also said to Agent 70, if it did come to pass that the Black Panthers did, I'm going to be slightly peeved. And
I mean, he is the king of the dead after all, so I have a feeling that he's got an in somewhere with with the higher ups.
You know what? I'm going to close this call now because this thing is over. No, I'm just kidding. Now you're right. You're actually right about that, though. You're right. So, but yeah, I don't know. That would be actually a weird thing to bring up considering everything, but sure, that is actually an avenue that they could present. Or I don't know, the Katati would be like, oh no, we're sorry for everything. I will heal you back up because you're not actually dead. You're just on the cusp of this. I don't know. We'll see. We still got one more issue to go in Empire, so we'll see. Next up, Marvel's Native Heroes star in Marvel's Voices Indigenous Voices #1. I believe we kind of talked about this, that this was going to be a thing a while back.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we did. I'm almost certain that this was going to be a thing. Anyway. Echo, Danny Moonstar, Warpath, and more of Marvel's Native Heroes will star in Marvel's Voices Indigenous Voices, an anthology that recruits the industry's most renowned indigenous talent. The comic is headlined by Jeffrey Verege. I apologize. I'm butchering that name. The writer-artist that curated the Of Gods and Heroes exhibition at the Smithsonian National Museum of American Indian. Joining him are Rebecca Roanhorse, Weshioit Alvrit. I apologize if I'm butchering your name. Please forgive me. Darcy Little Badger, Kyle Charles, Stephen Graham Jones, and David Cutler. So there's a press release for that. I'm assuming it's going to be coming out November since the solicits are coming. But it actually doesn't say here. So it says later this year, according to the press release down at the bottom. Next up. So look out for that though. But next up.
Right. So interestingly, before we move on to our next story, regarding the indigenous, the Native American superheroes, characters who are based on, who have that type of origin, being in Marvel, it actually made me think, where are the DC indigenous heroes? The Native American heroes. Is it really just Apache Chief and like maybe some lady from the Legion of Superheroes? And I believe there's an article that I ran across when I was Googling this, and it's a pretty sad roster of nondescript, historical references to, kind of side characters in DC Comics. And, it's amazing to see that in relation to children of the 80s, children of the late 70s and early 80s and the mid 80s and even the 90s, who came up with specifically the X corner of the Marvel Universe, throwing out Native American and American Indian characters left and right. Seeing those characters coming out, maybe not on a regular basis, but definitely getting some shine in at least the X corner. And we're not talking about Red Wolf, and we're not talking about I don't know if there's any other like kind of major characters that aren't X. That's what I was just kind of running through the old Rolodex to think of any of the American Indian characters who aren't necessarily X-Men related. But there's definitely a slew of X-Men, or at least a nice grouping of X-Men characters that are of Native American heritage. So it's kind of, in relation to DC, it's kind of, it's kind of amazing to see that there are so many. So.
Yeah, and even with what you mentioned as the Apache Chief, like, you would have to be of a certain vintage to pull that one out, because
even know that, right,
because the only other reference to that was like just a one-off in actually between Justice League and Young Justice, that there was a character that was supposedly the allegory for it, but even then that was a small good, like
they younger or something like that.
Yeah, there was a young character that was in Young Justice, but there was also a reference to a similar character in Justice League, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, and that's pretty much all for the most part you got. Like, I'm sure if there are more and you've done the research on that, that seems. But also just to close that out, I think I do remember we talking about this because of the fact that Taboo is supposed to be writing for Marvel for something, and I believe it was one of it was before this, and something, it might be something else also. But in relation to this and whatever else he's trying to do, or he was trying to do, that's why I figured like I remember this book coming up about the indigenous origins. Anyway, we're gonna move on with.
Next up, the Eternals are here. Aha! It's a new era of Marvel mythology, beginning this November in Eternals #1. It's coming from Kieran Gillen, who's done some Marvel work, but is really behind the Wicked and the Divine series from Image right now, and Esad Ribic, who did Secret Wars and the King Thor stuff and the early Thor stuff with Jason Aaron. They're coming together to put a brand new vision of Jack Kirby's classic Marvel creation in Eternals #1. There are first looks of the artwork, and Gillen said that he says that if he was ever going to do a book again in Marvel, it would have to be something he's never done before, and this is exactly that. So That sounds like it's gonna be, it's supposed to have been timed with the movie release, but they're just gonna start putting it out now, or at least in November.
Right. As tends to happen. And shout out to his Young Avengers run, which was actually not bad. But yeah, there you go. Next up, Marvel collects classic Aliens comics in new omnibus. And I guess there's a little line here that says, "At the Dark Horse Comics, no one can hear you scream." That's
Oh no.
that's kind of foul, Newsarama, but you know what? I get it. The long tail of Disney's acquisition of the assets of the former 20th Century Fox continues to have trickle-down effects for Marvel Comics. In April 2021, the comic book publisher will offer Aliens Omnibus Volume Number 1, a collection of comics based on the science fiction franchise that began with 1979's Alien. The comic books were being collected were originally published primarily by Dark Horse Comics, who owned the license, but apparently not the publishing rights to the contents for years. And yeah, and as we already know, that they're going to do a slew of books in Aliens, Predator universes, and more than likely some crossovers with Marvel characters, probably the Avengers, more than likely with those properties also. I just see it coming. Also, before we go to the next one, quick note. Matt Wang 97 says, I am bummed if that character really is dead in Empire. So shout out to Matt Wang 97. Yes, I would be also. Next up.
But don't blame classic material, aka classic AED. So anyway, you can see
that's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
Twitter. Next up, in toy news, there are actually a few announcements on Tuesday regarding Marvel Legends. One is a Venomized wave that had, it was actually spoiled, and that's why it actually didn't make any of these news stories. Someone actually spoiled the poor, hardworking folks over at Hasbro who do the Marvel Legends drops on fan. They used to be Fan Fridays. Now they're like Fan Tuesdays sometimes. So on Tuesday, it dropped that they're doing a Venomized wave with a Build-A-Figure of I think it was a Venomized Hulk Deadpool, I think, or something like that. Oh, Venomized Deadpool. Mm-hmm. They're gonna have a wave of Venomized figures. I actually pre-ordered my my Gwenom. It's Gwen with the symbiote, which is actually something that happened in the comics. They have a Venomized Miles, which I am not sure has happened. Actually, no, I think it did happen in the Carnage event.
Yeah,
Maximum Carnage event that happened last year.
That was recent, actually.
Oh, was it this year?
Yeah, I believe that was recent.
I can't remember if it was before, if it was 2019 or 2020. That's the worst part.
Yeah, I feel like that was kind of one of those ones that might have, like, if not at the tail end, well, when COVID started, that was kind of reaching the tail end or something around that. But I feel like I remember it around that time.
Right. And so they're actually doing. Right. I was going to say they're actually doing a Maximum Carnage as well as a movie Venom. And there's actually I don't want to say funny. There's a cool looking Morbius from the 90s Midnight Suns era that's out there for any fans of Morbius. But related to these Marvel Legends announcements, there's actually a Marvel Legends Walgreens exclusive 6-inch Silver Centurion Iron Man that's going to be coming out sometime this year. The worst part about this is that they have not made arrangements to have the pre-order set up yet, and that's kind of the annoying part, because I was mentioning to Roddykat earlier today about the issues that several people have had with Walgreens pre-orders for Marvel Legends exclusives. So let's hope that it won't be too hard to get the Silver Centurion Iron Man. You can click on the link in our notes to see the image. It is a pretty faithful rendition of the Silver Centurion Iron Man figure.
Probably one of my favorite Iron Man armors. So I'm looking forward to getting this one. It looks good from the pictures at least. I just did a Google search for Walgreens Silver Centurion without the Iron Man, and of course I got at least down at the bottom, a link to Centrum Silver Adult Complete Multivitamin.
Nice.
Which being of a certain person of a certain vintage, I could probably use at this point. But so yeah, apparently that it's not up and out yet. I was hoping like maybe something would have happened, but some other places are picked up the news of this. Anywho's, next up, Marvel's Avengers will utilize de novo DRM. Boo. That's all I'm going to say about that. Also, September 4th, that's when it's come out. And if you are watching this live and you are a video game person who likes video games, there is an open beta for Marvel's Avengers this weekend on, I believe, all platforms. I had a chance to play it last week. I did not. I'm seriously debating about just waiting until it comes out September 4th just to go ahead and play it right off the bat instead of going through the open beta. Or I might. We'll see what happens next weekend. Or next week, rather. Stay tuned, folks. Next up.
All right. Star Wars Squadrons will be the next game to immerse players in the Star Wars universe. Coming this October, the flight simulator will put players into the cockpit of some of the most iconic starships and allow them to fight it out in dogfight aerial gameplay. But EA is going one step further with Star Wars Squadrons by allowing players to fully customize their vehicles in a number of ways. Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is. I'm surprised that Star Wars, the good folks at Lucasfilms, aka Disney, and folks kind of signed off on that. But that's good. They're usually sometimes kind of precious about that stuff. But good on them. But yeah, so this article is basically about a lot of stuff that this kind of goes through. I'm down for an X-Wing versus TIE Fighter remake or whatever. So if this is the closest we're gonna get, shout out to it. Also, Microsoft Flight Simulator is out for those who really care. It has nothing to do with comics, but whatever. Bill and Ted take new life in new trivia travel board game. Bill and Ted Face the Music will finally give us another journey with the Wild Stallions. But okay, I wasn't sure if you were going to be on point with that. Thank you. But
I was just waiting for a gap. I was waiting for a pause.
Yeah. I wasn't sure, so I had to go with it. But the upcoming third film in the franchise has also resulted in celebrations of San Dimas High's most famous alums. There have been toys, new coloring books, and et cetera, et cetera. But now they're getting their own board game, and it's designed to travel anywhere. You know what? Instead of going through all of this, I'm just going to show the picture of the layout. It looks like Trivial Pursuit, kind of, sort of, with some of these card stuff. But it also says that the game also includes wild cards that serve as conversation starters and palate cleansers in between trivia rounds. So don't worry, Socrates is along for the ride too, as is Death from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. He's always up for a quick mini game. So yeah, it sounds like it's a trivia game based in the world of Bill and Ted. And you can see the layout right there. Next up, if you're watching the video, anyway. Next up.
Mantic Games revealed that its Hellboy, the role-playing game, is now fully funded on Kickstarter and is offering a retailer pledge level, which is projected to be fulfilled in May 2021. Hellboy, the role-playing game, allows players to take on the role of a BPRD agent and explore Mike Mignola's world of mystery and the occult. They can team up with other well-known agents such as Abe Sapien and Hellboy himself to battle villains like Rasputin and the Baba Yaga. The rules engine for this game is based on 5e and adds 5th edition and adds skills, or 5e, and adds skills unique to the Hellboy world. Okay.
He killed this guy with a pencil, a effing pencil. Anyway, and actually, just real quick, having rewatched John Wick very recently, which is where Agent 70's reference come up. I noticed they say Baba Yaga.
I was going to say that in Ant-Man too.
Well, yes, but in Ant-Man they say Baba Yaga, and John Wick they say Baba Yaga, which I've noticed. I'm like, that's kind of weird, but okay, sure, whatever.
Exactly.
Next up, though, as this article, I don't know what's going on with Game Radar's load times, and I hate it. Here we go. Court of Owls creator revisit classic DC storyline rumored to inspire WB's new Batman game. So DC's New 52 era has come and gone, thankfully, but arguably the most resounding impact and critical success of that time was Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman run. And it began with an opening arc called The Court of Owls. Batman knew... wait a minute, let's just cut to the chase here. This is basically going back through all of that stuff with that. And it looks like... Okay, this is just an interview with Scott Snyder and Capullo, and I guess somewhere in there is basically saying that I guess they're going to use the Court of Owls in whatever new Batman game that's coming out. So there you go. You can read that article for yourself and find that all out. Next up.
All right. In news that we relayed last week and discussed, DC Comics recently saw mass layoffs due to a corporate restructuring, resulting in it losing at least 20% of its staff across the entire company. This caused a stir in the comic community over the last week as creators and fans alike wondered what the company's future would look like going forward. One of the departments that was gutted was DC Direct. That was formerly known as DC Collectibles. It's the division within Warner Brothers responsible for selling collectibles under the DC brand name. Essentially Jim Lee came out and said that DC is going to shift collectibles to a higher price point to make up for putting out fewer things. So that's not a good look for collectors. I'm sorry, Roddykat, you might still be muted.
Sorry, I was muted. Isn't DC stuff already kind of sort of on the pricey side, or am I just thinking of someplace else?
No, there's a wide range, just like a lot of toy lines. DC has a wide range of prices.
Right. But I mean, they're direct stuff specifically. But
let's say they're generally competitive in terms of like the good action figures. When I say good, like I'm talking about comparable to the Marvel Legends line.
Sure.
And so in terms of price point, I think if those start to go up, it'll be a test to see if Hasbro doesn't follow suit, because if people are willing to pay more, they'll just start charging more for their own So
gotcha. Yeah, and I feel like they're kind of already there with like the Sentinel stuff, even though that's just like, but that's a different scale or whatnot. But I feel like some of that will probably.
Yeah, that crowdfunded stuff is, like it's hard to, that's actually understandable. It's understandable for them to go that route just to make sure that people will actually support that kind of outlay on behalf of the company. So
right, but I feel like some of that will probably be like, we can probably get away with bumping up our prices, based off of this stuff doing all right. But we'll see. We don't know. This is speculation. Deceased is calling the Justice League's biggest bluff. So this is basically I guess this is a think piece about the going on in the deceased comic books. And I will leave that to you folks, fine folks, to see what that is. I suspect if you know the Justice League and you know what would be a bluff to them, you kind of already know what it is. I already know what it is. But you can read it for yourself. Next up.
All right. So in Batman Gotham Knights number 17, He Who Eats Last, two of DC Comics' lesser-known characters return, the Condiment King and the Creeper. I recognize the Creeper, but the Condiment King?
Who?
So,
I've heard of that one very recently, actually, but yeah, I don't know.
What's that?
I said I've heard of the Condiment King quite recently because I think somebody that was referenced in like Teen Titans or something. But I also don't know.
Okay, so but in any event, Batgirl apparently stumbles into into this crazy rivalry in this issue.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, this is some sucky news coming up.
Yeah. As we said earlier, DC solicitations are out. But before that even came out, this article was out. In that DC cancels Teen Titans, Young Justice, Suicide Squad, Hawkman, and more. Now, two of those books I was reading. One of them actually came out this week, and this is sad news. Following the cancellations of Batgirl, Batman and Outsiders, and Justice League Odyssey in October, more DC titles are scheduled to get the axe in November. DC just released November solicitations, as I just said, that reveals that Teen Titans, Young Justice, Suicide Squad, Hawkman, and John Constantine Hellblazer once again gets the axe in November, with a cryptic message about Aquaman that makes the title's fate questionable. I guess. The Batman's Grave and Metal Men limited series will also reach their planned end in November. And this article says that this Teen Titans is the longest running title on the list, with the new creative team Robbie Thompson and Javier Fernandez recently joining the title with issue number 35. And of course, they talk about Young Justice, which is under which is under Bendis' Wonder Comics' imprint, and the first to catch the axe off of that, from that imprint. Which is sad, because I enjoyed that book.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So apparently, DC is remixing Wyclef's song into "They'll Be Gone in November." They'll be gone in November.
I should really close this. Just cut his mic right now. That's all. I have that power. I could do that, but I'm not.
Next up, Batwing joins the power. Really, Batwing joins the Power Rangers in Dan Mora's latest Mighty Morphin Batman family image. Dan Mora continues to flesh out his Power Rangers-inspired redesigns of the Batman family with a character who's well known for his armored suit, Luke Fox, aka Batwing.
Yeah, makes sense. Look good. Cool. I mean, I feel like it's kind of a stretch to say Power Ranger, considering he's already in armor, but okay. And I get it, but sure, whatever. Next up. Doggone it. Games Radar, what are you doing? Bear with me, folks. Loading. I don't know what's going on with the site, but this happens. Scott Snyder describes his creator-owned company, Best Jacket Press, as a new phase in my career. So yes, Scott Snyder started a new company to put out his works, creator-owned works. Let's see. Although Scott Snyder has released creator-owned projects intermittently in the past 10 years, Snyder tells Newsarama that this week's announcement of Nocturnal, which is a new book of his, officially launches a new phase of my career, focusing almost exclusively on creator-owned projects. And it's going under the company name of Best Jacket Press. Best Jacket is something I've been working on and teasing for a couple of years now, Snyder tells Newsarama. And I wanted to formalize it now because I finally have enough books in production to justify the label. And on a personal level, I wanted to do it because I'm entering a new phase in my career, and making it official feels like making it official. So, yeah. So, and then it goes on to say that, yeah, there's that Nocturnal book that I know there's another article in the clickbait section that is an interview with him about that, and the other books that we probably already talked about. Actually, what it says, third volume of Witches with Jock has been teased and has standalone projects with Francesco Francavilla, Becky Cloonan, Greg Capullo, and Francis Manipul. So, there you go. Next up.
All right. Bela Lugosi, who is best known for his iconic take on Count Dracula in the 1931 film, will posthumously reprise his role as the vampire for the upcoming graphic novel Dracula from Legendary Comics. The comic will be an adaptation of Bram Stoker's original 1897 Gothic horror novel Dracula, with art by L. Garing. The original story follows the vampire as he leaves Transylvania for England and clashes with Professor Abraham Van Helsing after attempting to spread his undead curse throughout the country. Robert Napton assisted with the adaptation, and Kerry Gamble served as art director. Okay.
Cool. Fantagraphics Books rebrands with a new logo and a shortened name. Fantagraphics, the independent comics and graphic novels publisher, has rebranded with a new name, just dropping the books part of it, and a new logo incorporating the Torch of Freedom, which weirdly reminds me of that Rambo cartoon, and that shouldn't happen. Fantagraphics art director Jacob Covies told Print Magazine, the classic horizontal bar logo was familiar but widely impractical and dated. You can see the new logo here on the video version if you are so inclined. But yeah, while publishing Gary Groth is proud to be Fantagraphics books, that full name is a little dusty sounding and limiting. It feels like the fanboy origins we come from, but belies our status as a pioneering curators of the comics medium, he added. There you go. Next up.
Alrighty, last but not least tonight, Titan Comics is relaunching the long-running Doctor Who comic book series with a new #1 this November to feature not only the, it's apparently, again, gone till November, to feature not only the current Doctor, but David Tennant's Doctor, and the return of the 70s villains, the Sea Devils. And they're also reviving the classic Doctor Who UK comic title name, Doctor Who Comic. Doctor Who.
Get into it. Get into it. You can even start with the new Who, with Destro. Come on, you can do it. Fucking you,
Sure.
70. He's not. I'm not. No, I'm not even following you up. All right, folks. That is the end of the news section. And we're going to get into another ad read.
And you know what we read when we're tired and it's late? Keep our podcast free by shopping at Amazon. Visit cspn.us and click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. Purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, apparel. You know you're doing it because we're still in semi-lockdown. For every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends the CSPN a payment that helps us keep the Comic Book Chronicles podcast free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. Amazon.com through CSPN.us. Do it today.
And before we end off the night, and in relation to what was just said, maybe you got a nice new Sabine figure, and of course it's not showing up because of my virtual background. There we go.
There it
Put
is.
myself behind it. That always works. Maybe you're doing that. Maybe you're getting. Well, actually, this didn't come from Amazon, but maybe you could order a Windblade figure if you're a Transformers fan. That's not working, but whatever. You saw the flashes. It's all good. Virtual green screens can be a bane, and I don't feel like turning it off. So, maybe you got a Hera figure that's supposedly slated to be coming in October, just like the Sabine figure, and it's coming next week.
It's nice to get those shipping updates. I did get my Sabine as well, so.
Yes.
But, hopefully, whatchamacallit, Amazon doesn't screw me with some of the other stuff I've got ordered, so.
Indeed.
We will see. Because, they are the sponsor of the show, so come on, don't screw me over.
Yeah, that aside. Folks, we're at the end of this here program, and just wanted to do that little quick little toy corner there, even though we sprinkled some in the midst of. Thank you, fine folks, for coming out this week. As always, I am one of your hosts, Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can also find me at News News Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CBCaps on Instagram. Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram. PC_Dirt on Twitter, Pop Culture Net on Twitter, popculturenetwork.com, and all those umbrella sites they're in, and also Byte, the Vine alternative takeover thing, whatever, under the name Comic Reviews No Vowels. And if you don't know what a vowel is, that's A-E-I-O-U and sometimes Y. Because some of y'all don't be knowing. Anyway, Tim, TOGG98 on Twitter. CB Cron on Twitter. That is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account. The Click Nation on Twitter also. That's the KLIQNATION. That's also the ClickNation.com. And of course, Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off. You can find this here podcast on the Cold Slither Podcast Network. That's cspn.us.
Do it today.
And as Agent 70 ponders the fate of the Knicks, we will also say that you can find this here podcast perusal as you can find it in other podcast places, in the podcast perusal, where you can find all other podcasts. I don't know what's going on right now, folks, but that would be Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. Again, we record every Thursday night, 9:30-ish p.m. on the Click Nations YouTube channel. If you're seeing us there already, hey, how you doing out there? Or you catch us sometime on the VOD. You know, it's out there. It's always going to be out there, unless we have some unknown issues like we did a few episodes back. Yeah, or last episode for that reason. Hopefully, I'm going to get that one straightened out, though. But yeah, 9:30 p.m. Thursdays. Catch it. We'll be here. And on that note, folks, this has been the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. One.
I love it when a plan comes together.